Peace, family. Vicki Dillard here for African Diaspora News Channel. Thank you so much for tuning in. As you come in, be sure to give us a big thumbs up and share the broadcast. Thank you so very much. It is so important when you do that, dear family, because you help to increase our footprint around the world. And how many of you all know that our voices certainly need to be elevated because the powers that shouldn't be aren't giving you this type of information? Is also so important because you allow us to do it our way and not based on the establishment protocols. Watch this. You all may remember that some weeks back, I revealed a law, a bill that has been making its way through the U.S. Congress. Of course, we have a House of Representatives, the lower house, and then we have the Senate. And then, of course, if everything properly passes by both houses, then it goes to the president to be signed. Well, that last law I told you about was called the Countering Malign Russian Activities in Africa Act. I'm going to say that again so that you can research it yourself. It's called the Countering Malign Russian Activities in Africa Act. And it's already passed the House of Representatives. And I told you that I would keep an eye on it because it's actually been going on for a couple of years. But I brought that to your attention because it essentially basically, based on many of our interpretations and other experts, gives America permission to basically punish African states if they work with Russia. Well, unfortunately, I want to tell you about another U.S. law that you may or may not know about. Listen very closely. The Council of Foreign Relations is considered to be sort of a go-to think tank, and they have influence in Washington, D.C. They have the ear of congresspersons when they get ready to make laws. They put out a piece, which caused me to do more research on the actual act that I read about, that says coastal West Africa has historically ranked low in the hierarchy of U.S. interests. However, increased instability in the region would erode decades of U.S. investment, listen, in humanitarian and development goals, and possibly diminish the appeal of Western modes of political and economic governance to the advantage of alternative modes promoted by countries such as China and Russia. By the way, this piece was written some months ago. For those reasons that I just stated, the State Department, under the provisions of the 2019 Global Fragility Act, also known as GFA, family, you know I'm not making it up because I'm giving you the receipt so you can research it. It's literally called the 2019 Global Fragility Act. Selected 5 coastal West African states. Y'all listen. Benin, Ghana, Guinea, Ivory Coast, and Togo as a priority region to receive special attention and assistance over the next 10 years. Family, if you look on a map at that region of countries, don't tell me you can't see a possible connection with what's going on right now. Keep listening. It says several factors put the coastal West African countries at risk of political volatility, intercommunal and criminal violence, and armed conflict. Political leaders in coastal West Africa have yet to establish popular and consistent norms. Listen to the U.S., this U.S. think tank that has the ear of Congress. They said that these West African states, what? They haven't established popular and consistent norms of political behavior necessary for legitimacy and stability. The U.S. foresaw some of these. Listen, these economies are unable to meet the collective needs of the populations that are doubling roughly every 20 to 30 years and are increasingly young. What's the youngest, one of the youngest continents on the planet? Is it the continent of Africa? Listen, family. It goes on. The concept of social contract between governments and their populations, as understood in the West, has little salience in the region. The steady deterioration, of security in the Sahel and Nigeria in recent years also poses a growing threat to the stability of coastal countries, underscoring how armed groups can easily exploit the proliferation of weapons and latent fragilities that exist in all West African countries. Y'all, I can't make this up. The GFA legislation directs and funds the Department of State, the DOS, to establish an interagency initiative to, quote, stabilize conflict affected areas and prevent violence globally. That's a quote from this act. Now, why am I bringing this up now? The act was from 2019, but Joe Biden's administration is said now to be getting ready to implement it. It's specifically named West coastal countries. It's specifically named the Sahel and specifically, family, among other things, this GFA legislation that's passed here in the United States and is said to be getting ready to be implemented under the Biden administration is sitting here making plans for a whole nother continent and many of its states on said continent. Among other things, it says what? The GFA legislation, and this is a quote from the act. The initiative is meant to, quote, stabilize conflict-affected areas and prevent violence globally. More specifically, DOS, which stands for the Department of State, is required to identify priority countries and regions and develop 10-year implementation plans for each. The GFA also directs the DOS to consult with civil society and government actors in affected countries, international organizations, and relevant private, academic, and philanthropic entities as it develops its plan. Some of you were concerned that ECOWAS, that Nigeria's president as head of ECOWAS. Some of you were even concerned that even Ghana, among others, might intervene and prevent the uprisings in the Sahel. As I dug a little bit more into this particular act, it seems as if there's a connection between the United States and those particular countries and or groups that threaten to put down those resistance, those revolutions. Some of you can't believe some of the legislation I've been bringing to you, like when I shared with you years ago, and I shared with you recently as a reminder, that the United States put hundreds of thousands of dollars to the tune of nearly 600,000 just to study Kenyan heterosexual men that might become soldiers so that they could identify who might be the threat against neocolonialism. Some of you couldn't believe when I brought to your attention, the Countering Malign Russian Activities Act in Africa that's making its way through Congress. Now I'm telling you literally about this 2019, listen to the title of it, Global Fragility Act. Tucked away in some legislation, but is said now to be ready to be implemented under the Biden administration. We know that the United States has refused to call the uprisings in Niger a coup. But that's for legal purposes, because if the United States declares it to be so, she has to stop doing certain types of business there. As I have revealed to you, there is a pipeline that's within that region going through Nigeria, through Niger, I think one or two other African states into Europe. They expedited this pipeline. Some have said there have been some delays on it, but for sure there has been reporting that the pipeline was being expedited shortly after the United States was accused of sabotaging the Russian Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. We also know that the United States has drones that they have spent millions and millions of dollars to not only build, but to maintain in that region. What are those drones surveillancing? What are those drones doing there? Just giving you a little food for thought. I think it's quite outrageous. It's telling, but I think it's important for me to alert the family around the world, because we know now is our time, and we know that predatory countries are looking for all types of ways to find an excuse to be on your land. My name is Vicki Dillard. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to share the broadcast and be sure to tap in to my high-level supernatural school at clubvicki.com. I teach you how to activate the power that's already latent within you so that you can become the new world rulers using your spiritual powers at clubvicki.com. That's clubvicki.com. I can't wait to see you again.